Thank you very much, Sammy. Okay, so that was really very, very knowledgeable. I would now like to call upon our next chief guest. His name is Joe Welinske. Joe has for over 25 years, he has been providing training, contracting, and consulting services for software industries. He has published the book, Developing User Assistance for Mobile Apps. He also teaches courses for Bellevue College, the University of California, and the University of Washington. In this session, Joe will be presenting a snapshot of our collective professional life in an attempt to identify what value in our daily work as a user assistance professional. So let's find out what interests and challenges you share with your UA peers. So basically the content that he will be discussing will include information on skills, technologies, tools, and salaries. May I please call upon Joe? Come on, people, applaud.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Don't worry. But I talk louder when I start getting into a presentation. So thanks for being here. In the back row, can you hear me okay? Is it all right? I get some waves back there. Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited to be part of your conference, and I'm very impressed by the number of people that you have here today. Thank you to Manisha and also to Raj and Naveen for making it possible for me to get here. Definitely were able to help out with my expenses to make it possible for this trip, and so I'm really excited to be involved with your event. This is my second time in India. The first time was in 1998, and at that time I just felt that I had an interest in visiting India, and I'd heard that some things were starting to develop with the software industry, which is the industry I'd been in already for about 15 years, and I thought, well, if I'm going there, I think maybe I'll try and organize a seminar with technical writers and talk about some of the things that I'm involved in the United States for technical writing. And so I contacted a few contacts that I had in India, and I thought, well, we should be able to get together and get a nice group of people. And it turned out that at that time, even though I had promoted this activity, I was only able to find 6 other people that wanted to sit in a room with me and talk about technical writing. So this is definitely a whole different world. This is really exciting to see so many people here, and I'm very impressed with that. In my bio, I guess I haven't updated it for a while. It said I've been involved in technical communication for 25 years. I think now I'm going on 32 years. So I think I might be one of the oldest people in the room, if not the oldest. But I bet I have the most experience of it. It's a lot of years. I've been, not that I always think I knew what I was doing, but I started going to STC talks in my local area, which at the time was in Chicago, and going to meetings starting around 1984. And I enjoyed it very much. And now I live in Seattle, and happy to be here for another trip. And I'm also going to be going to Jaipur and Mumbai, and my wife is here, and so looking forward to having a good time. I thought there were a lot of great comments in Sammy's presentation, and it was a really good programming to have me as a follow-up, and I'm glad to follow up on that presentation because I'm going to talk about some of the things that I see as happening in the industry. However, after seeing Sammy's presentation, the one thing I didn't realize is that I needed to start things out with some disco music. So I looked in my iPhone to see what I had. So is music on? You could start something to get things started off here. Let's see if this works.
7 a.m. waking up in the morning, gotta be fresh, gotta go downstairs, gotta have my bowl, gotta have cereal.
group to participate in. And so in addition to the statistics from the broader surveys, I'm going to include the data that I received from the people that contributed from STC India. So thank you for those who contributed to that. And I also have surveys on tools and on salary, although that's not as relevant to what we're doing here since it's a lot of United States statistics. But as I go through, I just want to talk about some of the trends that I've seen come out in the surveys over the years that relate to changes in our profession. We've broken this up into several different sections. One of those being skills and the types of things that we do on a regular basis. And in the survey, I had people rank things as to the items that they felt were most valuable in their daily work lives, however they chose to define that within their own situations. And so these are the top skills, the top-ranked skills from our Skills and Technology Survey. And there's not a lot of movement over the years. I've been doing these surveys for about 13 years now. The items at the very top have always been highly ranked items. So it's clear that we know the core of what we get paid for. Writing procedures is one of those. Task analysis, writing reference information. So those are things that we live and breathe on a regular basis, and that I still enjoy doing that as a large part of my work. Interviewing is one of those interesting skills where I don't believe that there's probably any of us that don't use interviewing skills in our daily work to be able to gather information from subject matter experts. But where do we learn those skills? That's actually one of those things that you don't find in traditional educational curriculums. It's even hard to find it at the local level through webinars and seminars. But it's something that everybody always mentions as being very important to what we do. Some of the items that are a little surprising to me in the statistics is the value placed on multimedia. Now, half of the people in the survey indicated that this is extremely valuable and a big part of what they do. But it's been that percentage for a long time, and I'm always surprised by that because over the last few years, more and more video has become a central part of the deliverables that I do as a technical communicator. It's certainly something that I'm always thinking about with every project that I go into. Another item in the survey that was a little different this year was the search and indexing. Previously, I'd listed only the item of indexing, and last year I realized that there were probably different ways that people were thinking about indexing, and so this year I split it into search, where most of the work is involved in search engine optimization, metadata creation, and separate from typical back-of-the-book style indexing. And I'm glad I did that because it definitely separated out the percentages where then indexing had been valued highly by 35% of the people last year, but now when I split it, there's a big difference. So highly valued, we have search highly valued by 48% and traditional indexing highly valued by only 28%. So there's definitely a difference there. But now just to look at a difference that we have with from the STC survey, some of the items are just the same, but other items are a lot higher than in the U.S. survey. So at least for the people that participated in the STC India survey that I put together, the percentage of people that highly valued the work that they put into search was much higher than in the general Writers UA survey, and the other area that was much higher was in information architecture. So I don't know if that that applies to everybody, but for the people in the survey, that there definitely was a difference in the way that you're thinking about things here in your country. Some other skills that we talk about in the survey is expertise with authoring tools, and that's always been an area that is of high interest to everybody each year that takes the survey. Some of the items less so. Content reuse, single sourcing development. For several years, it's been at the level of about 2/3 of the respondents indicating that that was extremely important. That's another area that always surprised me that it didn't become higher, because again, in a lot of the projects that I work on, it seems like single sourcing comes up all the time. There's very few projects where it's a single media that I'm delivering content to. And it may be that people just aren't using single sourcing techniques as much, even if they may be doing different media outputs. And another one that hasn't increased much is usability testing. And I think that number of 40% is relatively low, because I've been involved with a lot of user experience projects through a company called Blink, which I do work with in the Seattle area, and they do a lot of usability testing. And it's really opened my eyes to, over the past 5 to 7 years, seeing what usability testing can tell you, not only about software, but about your documentation. And I'm involved in the software industry. Almost all of my work is in that area. And in the software industry, it's almost impossible to find a professional software development process that doesn't actively test the software at many different levels. Aggressively, actively identifying problems with the way that we produce that information. But when you look at the documentation, the online help that's developed for that same software, we very rarely in our profession have the opportunity to do usability testing of our documentation. And it's a cultural issue, not in the United States, throughout the world, everywhere that I go, I kind of find that it's just not common to get resources for that. But yeah, I mentioned I've been doing this work for over 30 years or so, and I was reflecting on all of the projects I've done in that time, and most of that work, I didn't test my documentation. I didn't have users actively work through use case scenarios to find out if, in fact, if they worked through a procedure, that they were able to have the desired effect. And now I wonder how much of that work that I did actually ended up being useful to people. It's kind of a sobering thought, and so I encourage everybody to think about ways that you can test your documentation with whatever resources you might have available. For this particular question, content reuse was much higher for the India respondents than for the overall Writers UA survey. Expertise with authoring tools was the same. The response to usability testing was higher. Actually, overall, the STC India results tended to value quite a lot of things higher than our overall survey. So I'm just wondering if maybe we're fortunate to get the most active people responding to the survey, because there are definitely a lot of high numbers for this. Another area that we look at is experience people have with code level expertise, and so we look at a lot of different items. DITA, the Darwin Information Architecture, is one that it seems like it's been at 20%, 1 out of 5 people valuing it highly for a long time. That hasn't changed very much. I don't know if that's going to change. I know in the Seattle area, one of the reasons that DITA was never a big part of documentation in our metropolitan area of Seattle was because the largest manufacturers of software didn't use DITA as a framework. They didn't buy into that. So Microsoft and Boeing, for example, didn't have any DITA efforts involved. But in the last couple of years, certain divisions in Microsoft are using DITA. The same thing at Boeing, and Amazon is getting involved in DITA as well. And so all of a sudden, there's a lot of interest in the Seattle area because jobs are asking for that skill. In fact, I teach at Bellevue College, and we added a class on DITA authoring, and that class is sold out, and so it looks like that's something more and more people are interested in. On the STC India survey, it was a higher percentage than the overall Writers UA survey. So almost 58% of the respondents indicated that, 61% of respondents indicated that understanding DITA was extremely important. In the survey, we talk about technologies as well, and one of those technologies that we look at is are the technologies provided by Microsoft for Windows Help, which has been for a long time one of the primary ways that people deliver documentation for Windows software. The HTML help system has been around for a long time. I wrote a book, actually the first book I wrote on Windows Help was in 1990, but I wrote a book on HTML help in 1995. And it changed a little bit over the next couple of years, but the last revision was in 1998. And so the fact that only 24% of the respondents indicated HTML help is vital to their efforts may seem like a low percentage until you recognize that's for software that's been around since 1998. That's like crazy old in today's software world. But still, 1 out of 4 people doing documentation, according to our survey, find it extremely important to their efforts. And then you can see right below that the numbers from the STC survey. We're very close to that for HTML help. And the percentage of people still using WinHelp from the STC India respondents was higher than the overall survey. And that's going back even further. So that means supporting software that's from 1991, 1992. So supporting legacy versions of software, I guess, is something that's going to continue to be a big issue for us. And we look at other technologies as well in the survey to see if people are involved with those. A lot of technical communicators aren't even aware that there are help options specific to the Mac OS put out by Apple, Java help, Oracle help for Java. Most of us are familiar with browser-based help because that is the primary way that most of us deliver help these days. So you can see 3/4 of the people highly value browser-based help, and that's almost the same percentage from the STC India survey. And you can see that in your own country as well, those other items aren't used very much. What about manuals? That's something that I think is always interesting to consider as to how important they are in our daily work. when we were talking about manuals, you definitely have to split it out between PDF, digital versions of manuals, and print versions. And PDF manuals are definitely something of high importance to all of us because of their the easy ability to be able to convert into that format, that it's so ubiquitous, with plugins for PDF available for browsers worldwide. And print's much lower, but on the other hand, 1 out of 5, that's still a lot of people actively valuing printed materials for their documentation. So that's not going away anytime soon. There's a lot of organizations where they have legal requirements to provide information in print. Their customers want to get information in print. It may be a situation where people are not necessarily online and have to be able to have printed versions. So I think that's always going to continue to stay with us. One of the questions I have about PDF manuals at some point I want to add into the survey is to get a little bit more understanding of how many of us actively craft our PDFs in terms of including a lot of hot links and a solid table of contents, good searchability, as opposed to just save as PDF. Because I think there's definitely a difference there between a real high fidelity digital version of a document and something that's just a quick dump from Word or other popular authoring tools. And the other digital media don't have really high pickup, even though I assume that EPUB would be more popular than it is now, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Now for PDF and print, the numbers in the STC India responses were pretty close to what we had, with 82% highly valuing PDF and 29% highly valuing print, with some higher percentages for EPUB and the other digital media options. Looking at other technologies and how they're valued, you can see a ranking of these technologies, with the web itself as a platform being right up there at the top, but a lot of other items that we get involved with for technical communication: quick reference, knowledge base, multimedia tutorials, forums and wikis, highly valued by only 1 out of 4 people. But that's actually gone up a lot. So that had just been a small percentage of people before this, and it's increased a lot over the last few years. So more and more of us are thinking about how to use those more actively for our user assistance. And in the STC survey, just about every item on that list had a higher percentage than in the overall Writers UA. So again, people that were responding to STC in India survey are all very progressive, because you're highly valuing a lot of different deliverables, which is really good to see that you're interested in these different types. One of the things that frustrates me sometimes when I'll be talking to different people in technical communication is, it's so often I ask people what types of documentation they put together, and often it's, we do a PDF manual and we do online help, and that's it. And that's fine. Those are, as you can see from the survey, they're important methods. They satisfy a certain a high percentage of our customers, but there's so many different ways to present information to our customers, and I've always believed that different people like to learn in different ways, and if you have the resources, it's worth it to think about different ways to present that information. We've had so much success in projects I've worked on adding in video components. But those are so popular, and frankly, if I had to measure the effectiveness of a help system versus video for a particular procedure, I think the help system might actually result in better learning. But there's also just the issue of responding to what people are interested in, because if they're not consuming their information, they're not getting that information. And if they're turned off by a PDF but turned on by a video, then you really have to consider that as being something you want to include. We do a separate survey where we look at the tools that people used, and you can kind of see the percentages here. I didn't include that in the STC India survey. But you can kind of see the rankings of these aren't rankings of necessarily of satisfaction, but broadly of tools that people use. So, for example, the top vote getter, Adobe Acrobat. So 3/4 of all respondents indicated that that was a tool that they used. And then lesser percentages after that for the others. I thought it was interesting that a screen capture tool like Snagit was so popular among user assistance professionals, and that so many of the Adobe products are included in there. I think a lot of that is because of the development of the technical communication suite over the years, and just the value you get out of all of those products being available at a price. I think the introduction of suites to authoring tools has definitely put more good tools in the hands of people than we had in the past. And so other vendors offer suites as well. Looking at platforms, it's probably no surprise that Windows is the top platform that we support, but looking at a couple other things, mobile, 39% of respondents indicated that that was a platform they support. So 2 out of 5 respondents, their organizations are currently supporting mobile. That's increased dramatically. It was just 5% a few years ago. So that's changed a lot. And another thing that's changed a lot over the last 5 years is the percentage of respondents indicating that they support Mac OS X. And I think that comes because of the influence of the iPhone, and the iPad has more people buying Macs, and so that number's increased quite a bit as well. And then looking at legacy information, again, interestingly, 21% of people still support Windows of the version 1998 and before that. Figures for STC India were pretty much the same. In fact, the mobile number was exactly the same. So it seems like those percentages are pretty close in both of those. We also asked specifically what platforms people support. So if you're doing mobile, if you're supporting mobile, what are the device platforms that you support? And so it's more or less a tie between iOS for iPhone, iPad, and Android, and web apps. So web apps are a very viable platform. It's just a platform you don't hear about as much because there's no sales associated with it. So you hear about Android, you hear about iPhone so much because there's just billions of dollars in the sales of those devices, whereas web apps don't have that same cachet. But those are the top 3 that we support, and that's also reflected in the numbers for STC India, with the difference that in STC India, Windows Phone is much more highly supported than in the overall Writers UA study. It looks like on my clock we've got 12 minutes here, so I'm going to, of my allotted time, so I'm going to just keep going along with that. We also look at frameworks. So these are processes that we use in our work to construct our user assistance. And Agile software development, another item that Sammy mentioned, that's increased dramatically over the past few years. So well over half of the respondents indicated that they're involved in some form of agile development in their organization. So, if there's a skill that you'd want to learn more about, then that would be it. So I started talking with 45 minutes. So are we at 5 minutes or 11 minutes? Okay, so I got to cut short. All right, sorry guys, but our clocks aren't in sync. So definitely recognize that. I already mentioned DITA as in terms of those numbers. Agile software development valued even more highly in the STC India survey. So 3/4 of the respondents indicated that was extremely important to the work that they do. The other items that I have are more salary related. I'm just going to include them briefly just because they might be of interest to you. It turns out that in our salary survey, most of the respondents are from the United States and a little bit in Canada. So some of these aren't relevant. But if you're interested, this is a snapshot of what the U.S. User assistance folks find that they get in terms of benefits. So the top benefit that's received is getting paid medical and dental coverage. Also getting some type of retirement funding, which in the United States the main format is you put in some money and then the company matches what you put in. So that's also widely used. Bonuses, paid training, profit sharing, some stock options, so it kind of diminishes from there. Now in terms of satisfaction with their jobs, most people that take the Writers UA survey are pretty satisfied with their work, so that's kind of a good thing. So apparently UA people are pretty happy with the types of things that we're involved in. One of the biggest things that people indicated they were happy about if they had it was flexibility in work schedule. So the ability to balance other parts of family life with a full-time job. So that's definitely one of the biggest items. And then one of the things we find with working conditions is that most companies haven't increased their staffing much over the past few years. However, the number of projects has increased a lot, with the result being that everybody ends up working a lot harder than they did a few years ago. So I guess we're really happy with all of our work, and we're willing to take on all the extra burden from the new projects. So a little bit of a dissonance there, but I guess if everybody's good with it, then we're in a good position. And the last thing I just wanted to mention, this is my last comment, is just on salary. So just if you're interested, the average salary of UA people in the United States is $85,000 per year. That varies a lot in the United States depending on where you live. If you're in California, the average salary is more like $120,000 a year. But the costs are enormous for housing and everything. Everything in California is hugely expensive. Whereas if you're in a place like Nebraska, Kansas, in those states, your salaries are going to be lower, but your expenses are much lower as well. So I just wanted to show that. And then the single biggest differentiator in salary is whether or not you're a full-time manager. And so that's the single biggest indicator that as to whether you're going to get a significantly larger salary, is if you're doing 75% or more of your time managing other people. For me, that never worked out. I never really liked managing people, so I had to go work for myself because I hit this ceiling really fast where the only way I could make more money was by being a manager. And I didn't really like that too much, but I guess that's the way it is. And then in terms of experience, you can see that in response to our survey, overwhelmingly, there's a lot of people with a lot of experience in our industry. In this survey, over 3/4 of the respondents had been working in this field for 10 or more years. Hopefully we're going to keep getting more and more younger people involved. I teach a program at the University of Washington where we get new people getting involved, and so things like STC are vital to be able to get those people involved in our profession, get new ideas circulating among us. And when I was doing a talk a few months ago, I was interested to find out what younger people were thinking about technical communication. And so I went on Twitter and I searched for technical communication to see what kind of posts I would be getting from the overall worldwide Twitter feed. And I found this one person who tweeted named Amanda Jensen. And that's a picture of Amanda from her Twitter feed. And here's the tweet that Amanda put out about her technical communication class at university. I absolutely despise my tech comm class, in capital letters. We only ever learn about one type of technical communication, not all of them. So she really despised it, but I want to know what the one type was, because she definitely needed to diversify, but she didn't stop there. So within another minute, there was another tweet from Amanda where she follows up on that, saying, "Yes, I am definitely going to just submerge myself in company technical writing my whole life. That's what I'm doing with my life." Nice sarcastic comment, somebody who's now spent 32 years doing this. And Amanda's basically diminishing everything for my 3 decades of work. It's like, that's the whole life. But she wasn't done. One more tweet after that to follow up her trio of thoughts about the world of technical communication. And by the way, I really believe in concise writing, so I appreciate Amanda's final tweet, which was, "Stupid technical communication." So hopefully I'll meet Amanda sometime. That's the end of my presentation. Again, the slides are available. Thank you very much. And I'll be around if you have any questions.